My name is Rosaura Morales, and I'm 63 years old. All my life, I've believed that silence is the glue that holds a family together, or, at least, helps them pretend it is. The night I crossed the bridge into Merida to see my daughter. The sky was a heavy tarnished silver, pressing down on me just as hard as the knot in my chest. Beside me on the passenger seat sat a warm pecan cake and a small red box, a gift for my grandchildren. It had been 3 long years since I'd spent Christmas Eve with my daughter, and all I wanted was for this time to be different, peaceful. My daughter, Marisol, opened the door before I could even knock a second time. She looked perfect, as she always does, hair in a neat bun, makeup flawless. "You made it," she said, her voice flat, as if she hadn't been watching the clock. The house smelled of rosemary and butter. I could hear her husband, Gabriel, in the kitchen, his voice booming with a cheerfulness that felt a little too practiced to be real. I followed her into the dining room. The table was stunning, glowing under the light of white candles. Every fork and knife aligned like a soldier. Safe places were set. I found my name card at the far end, next to the children's seats. "That's fine," I told myself. "It doesn't matter. It all looks beautiful," I said, placing the napkin on my lap. Marisol just smiled, her eyes still glued to her phone. The children suddenly burst in, their laughter bouncing off the polished floors as they chatted about Santa Claus. For just a moment, it almost felt like a real family gathering again. But that feeling shattered when Marisol's tone cut through the air. "Mom," she said, still scrolling, "next time, maybe let us know before you come." We were a little behind schedule. I managed a polite smile, but the warmth from the cake I was holding seemed to vanish. In the kitchen, Marisol moved like a conductor, leading an orchestra, every gesture precise, every command softened with a smile for her guests. I quietly placed my cake among the other desserts she had laid out. "Oh, Mum," she said, glancing over. "Next time, maybe bring something simpler. We already have plenty." Her tone was light, airy, but her words landed with a heavy thud. Just nodded and started washing dishes that were already clean, just to have something to do. Gabriel appeared with a tray of wine glasses, his voice still booming with that forced excitement. "Let's make tonight perfect, our first real Christmas in this house," he declared. Everyone cheered. No one mentioned the pecan cake or the other little things I'd brought. The doorbell rang again, another couple from Gabriel's office. More laughter, more perfume, more polite introductions. Marisol greeted them with a warmth I hadn't seen from her since she was a little girl. "You've met my mother, Rosaura," she said with a tight smile. She helped with the sides. Helped, not cooked, not prepared, just helped. When dinner began, I sat at my place at the end of the table, beside the children. Marisol raised her glass for a toast. It was beautiful, perfectly rehearsed. "To family," she said, "and to building everything we have with our own hands." Glasses clinked, faces glowed with pride. I raised my glass just a second too late. "It is." The dishes were passed around. Marisol would gently correct, "Me, this has too much salt, that needs more butter. The gravy could be smoother." Each comment was a delicate, little slap. I just smiled, my hands folded neatly in my lap, watching the candle flames tremble. The laughter around me felt warm and distant, like a song I'd forgotten the words to. Then, the roast lamb came out of the oven. The aroma was so rich it seemed to shimmer in the air. Marisol carved it with great ceremony, serving the guests first, then her husband, then the children. A clue. I waited politely, a smile fixed on my face. When the platter finally reached me, I lifted my plate. Suddenly, her hand shot out and pressed it back down. The clatter of metal against porcelain silenced the entire room. "Mom," she said. Her voice was soft, but sharp as broken glass. "You didn't pay for anything tonight. You don't deserve even the scraps." For a split second, the room just held its breath. Gabriel froze, his wine glass halfway to his lips. The children stared, their forks hanging in the air. The Christmas music kept playing, bright and completely indifferent. I blinked once, twice, as if that could somehow erase her words. But they just hung there in the air, heavy and ugly. Gabriel cleared his throat. "Honey, it's fine," but I interrupted before he could finish. It's fine, I said, my voice sounding like it belonged to a stranger. Please, go on. Marisol just shrugged and turned back to her guests. Sorry everyone, let's not make things awkward. The woman beside me shifted uncomfortably. Maybe I can pass her some of mine. No need, Marisol cut in, that smile still plastered on her face. My mother's not hungry. She already ate, didn't you, Mum? I nodded once. My hands felt cold wrapped around my empty plate. My granddaughter Alba whispered, Grandma, aren't you going to eat? Gabriel's knee brushed against Marisol's under the table, and the little girl went silent. I stood up slowly, careful not to make a sound. Excuse me, I murmured, leaving my empty plate on the table. No one tried to stop me. The laughter started up again, quieter this time, more cautious, as if everyone was pretending a glass hadn't just shattered on the floor. In the hallway mirror, I saw my reflection, faded lipstick, straight shoulders, and dry eyes. Behind me, the dining room gleamed, a golden, false paradise. I walked to the bathroom and gently shut the door, as if that tiny act of control could keep me from falling apart. The room smelled of lavender soap. I turned the lock and leaned against the sink, listening to the muffled laughter seeping through the walls, like a radio tuned to someone else's happiness. My reflection looked surprisingly calm. Same neat grey hair, same pearl earrings I wore every Christmas. But my eyes, they were just empty. I reached for a tissue, then stopped. My hands weren't even trembling. That surprised me. And then I thought of the rent payments. For 8 years, I had quietly transferred money from my account to Marisol's landlord every first Monday of the month. I thought of the school tuition I covered when Gabriel's business was slow, the insurance bills, the doctor visits, the groceries, 1,000 silent acts that all whispered the same thing, I love you. And apparently she had never heard a single one. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and scrolled through the list of recurring payments I'd set up years ago. Rent, tuition, insurance. It read like a diary written in numbers. There it was. A monthly deposit labeled home support. I pressed my thumb to the screen and cancelled it. Then another, and another. Each confirmation felt like a steadying heartbeat. Outside, I heard a chair scrape and then a burst of laughter, my daughter's laughter. I slipped the phone back into my purse. In the mirror, I straightened my blouse and looked at myself until I could see my reflection without a trace of pity. Then I whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, it's over. It wasn't anger. It was simple logic, finally settling in, a balance long overdue. When I stepped back into the hallway, the party was in full swing again. I walked past the dining room without a single glance inside and went straight for my coat. The drive home was silent. The streets of Merida nearly empty. The pecan cake sat beside me, untouched, cooling into something hard, sweet, and useless. Back in my own house, the Christmas tree lights blinked softly in the corner. I poured a glass of water, and later that night, I opened my laptop. I pulled out a thin folder labeled Home Support, filled with rental contracts, tuition receipts, and insurance statements, all signed in my steady hand. I called the bank and cancelled the standing order that had been active since 2015. Then I sent 2 more emails, one to the school's billing office and another to the insurance agent. I could almost hear the system shifting, the quiet unraveling of the safety net I had maintained for so long. When the final confirmation came through, the clock read 4:03 a.m. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Through the mist, I heard the faint chime of church bells. I walked to the window and looked out at the pale purple sky. I thought of Marisol's face at the dinner table. Let the morning have her, I whispered to the dawn. I won't guard her nights anymore. I closed the laptop, turned off the Christmas lights, and finally let my house go dark. Thanks for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. Your support means the world. 3 days after Christmas, a grey drizzle clung to the windows of my home in Merida. The morning was spent in the parish kitchen, packing meals for the shelter. The air smelled of stew and soap, and the steady rhythm of ladles against pots was a calming, meditative sound. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from the bank confirmed what I already knew. All transfers had been stopped. Then, Another from the property manager, acknowledging a change in responsibility. I silenced them both. The quiet work of undoing a lifetime of enabling was already complete. That afternoon, while folding laundry, I got a voicemail from Marisol. Her voice was tight, as if she'd rehearsed it. "Hi, Mum. Weird thing, the rent payment didn't go through this month. The landlord called. I'll fix it. Just wondering if you changed cards or something." I didn't reply. Why would I? The next day, another call came, this time from her husband Gabriel. His usual charm was gone, replaced by a thinly veiled irritation. "Rosora, sorry to bother you, but Marisol says you cancelled some payments. We're having a little issue with the accounts. The kids' tuition got rejected." "A little issue," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "Yeah, possibly," he muttered. "So, are you going to fix it?" "No," I said calmly. "I think it's time she does." The silence that followed was heavy, stripping away all politeness from his tone. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "I see." That night, I stood by the window, watching the rain trail down the glass. I imagined Marisol refreshing her banking app, Gabriel demanding answers she didn't have. The world she'd built on my quiet, invisible support was beginning to crumble. And for the first time, I wasn't there to hold it up. A few days later, on a Saturday morning, a frantic, uneven knocking echoed through my house. It was a sound I hadn't heard at my door in a very long time. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and opened it. There stood Marisol, drenched from the drizzle, her hair plastered to her face. She clutched a folder in one hand, her phone trembling in the other. "Mum," she said, her voice breaking. "The landlord says the payments stopped 2 months ago. He's sending eviction notices. And the tuition." Gabriel's furious. Her eyes were wide with a mix of panic and accusation. She shoved the papers toward me, as if they were proof of some terrible mistake. I stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in, but she hesitated, poised on the threshold as if crossing it would cost her something she couldn't afford to lose. Inside, the house was silent, except for the steady ticking of the clock on the mantel. I poured 2 cups of coffee, set them on the table, and waited. "I called the bank," she said, her words tumbling out. "They told me the transfers were cancelled by the account holder." "That doesn't make sense. You set those up for us, right?" I looked her directly in the eye. "Yes," I said quietly, "and I cancelled them." For a moment, the words didn't register. Then her mouth opened slightly, as if searching for air. "Why? Why would you do that? You said you wanted to help." "I did," I answered, my voice calm but firm. "For 8 years, I did. Every rent payment, every bill, every emergency. You built a life on the foundation of my silence. And the night you told me I didn't even deserve your leftovers, that was the last time I mistook my silence for your love." Her face just crumbled. All the defiance melted away, replaced by something raw and frightened. "I didn't mean it, Mum," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was just angry." "I know," I said softly. "You didn't think." The papers slipped from her hand, scattering across the floor. She sank into a chair and covered her face. The sound she made wasn't exactly crying, it was deeper. The sound of something fundamental breaking apart. I sat across from her, the coffee cooling untouched between us. Thawed. The rain began again, a soft, steady rhythm against the window. For the first time in years, my daughter had nothing left to hide behind. No bills, no appearances, no excuses, only the truth, sitting right there at my kitchen table. January, settled over Merida with a thin grey chill. The city seemed quieter after the holidays, its shimmer gone, leaving only wet pavement and bare branches. One afternoon, coming back from the market, I passed Marisol's old apartment. The windows were dark. A moving truck was parked outside, men hauling boxes through the drizzle. I didn't stop, but I knew what it meant. A week later, a friend gently confirmed it. Your daughter's lease was terminated. The unit's back on the market. Rumors followed. Gabriel had taken a job in Cancun, leaving the children with his parents for stability. And Marisol, they said, was working part-time at a cafe near the Gran Paseo de Montejo. I started watching from afar, careful not to be seen. I saw her refilling coffee cups, wiping down tables, forcing a polite smile for customers. There was a new heaviness in her shoulders, but also something clean, like a woman finally carrying the weight of her own life. During one of her breaks, I saw her leaning on the counter, eating a simple sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Another waitress said something that made her laugh, a small, fleeting sound. For an instant, she looked like my daughter again, the little girl who used to bake cookies with me on rainy afternoons. I left before she could see me. Back home, I reheated my tea and told myself she was learning what I always knew. Hunger teaches much faster than comfort. It was early spring when the knock came. The sun had just slipped behind the oaks, casting a faint amber glow on the porch steps. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there she was, Marisol. She was thinner, and somehow older, though only a few months had passed. Her hair was tied back neatly, her clothes simple but clean. In her hands, she held a small envelope. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. "I didn't want to call. I thought it was better to come." I nodded and stepped aside. She entered quietly, as if walking on sacred ground. Air. Between us was different, no sharpness, no pride, just the simple, heavy weight of what had been lost and what was now being rebuilt. "I found a job," she said after a moment. "Full-time office work at a dental clinic. I'm renting a room near the river. It's small, but it's mine." Her smile was timid, unsure of its welcome. She slid the envelope across the table, toward me. Her first payment. A symbolic start to making things right. I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "You don't owe me money, Marisol." She looked up, her eyes glistening. "I know," she whispered. "But I owe me this." In that moment, I saw it. The pride wasn't gone, it had just found its proper place. It wasn't the pride of taking, but the pride of earning. Of standing on her own. I slid the envelope back to her. "Then let's have some coffee," I said. "And you can tell me all about your new life." She smiled, a real smile this time, and for the first time in a very long time, my daughter was truly home. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you in the next one. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "But I need you to see that I can give something back." We sat there in silence, just listening to the cicadas hum through the open window. She was holding her teacup in both hands, and the steam rising from it seemed to soften her face, blurring the hard lines that time and regret had etched there. "I think about that night every day," she whispered, her voice so low I had to lean in. "I was cruel. I was blind." Her voice broke, but this time, the tears didn't come. This time, she wasn't asking for my help, not really. She was just asking for a place to sit. And for the first time, I let her. A year can change everything. A year later, the house smelled different. It smelled of rosemary and freshly baked bread, aromas of comfort and new beginnings. The table, once a battleground of silent resentments, now held only those who chose to be there. We were a family rebuilt, not on the ruins of the past, but on a new foundation of quiet understanding, all of us glowing under the warm kitchen light. Marisol arrived early. She brought a cake she'd baked herself, a small, humble offering. Her hands were steadier now, I noticed. Her laughter was gentler, as if life had finally smoothed her roughest edges. Gabriel didn't come. She told me they had separated a few months before, peacefully. It was a simple statement, delivered without drama or a plea for sympathy. Then, the children came tumbling in after her, their bright, chaotic voices filling the kitchen with a sound I hadn't realized how much I had missed. It was a sound that had been absent for too long. "Grandma, can we light the candles?" little Alba asked, clutching a box of matches tightly in both her small hands, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Go ahead," I said, a smile touching my lips. "Just like last year maybe, with a few better manners this time." Marisol smiled back at me, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the smile actually reached her eyes. It was real. She helped me ladle soup into the bowls, and we moved around each other in the small kitchen with an easy, unspoken rhythm. There were no corrections, no sharp intakes of breath, no tension coiling in the air between us. It was just two women preparing a meal for their family. When we finally sat down, the air was calm. This wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of unspoken anger that I was so used to. This was a gentle quiet, the kind that settles in after a long-awaited truth has finally been spoken aloud. Cess! No one felt the need to make a grand toast or a dramatic speech. We just ate. The children passed the bread, their hands reaching across the table. They traded silly jokes that made no sense but made them giggle uncontrollably. One of them spilled a little water, and there were no scoldings, just a quiet clean-up with a napkin. It was beautifully, perfectly normal. Marisol's gaze traveled around the table, taking in each face, before it landed on the empty chair I'd purposefully left at the end. "Is someone else coming?" she asked, her brow furrowed in gentle curiosity. I shook my head, a soft smile on my face. "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's for whoever needs a place." She nodded slowly, her eyes full of a deep, quiet understanding that needed no further explanation. She got it. Outside, the afternoon sun began its slow descent, painting the world in shades of liquid gold. I watched Marisol as she cut the cake she had baked. The crust crumbled a bit under the knife, and instead of getting flustered, she laughed. It was a light, carefree sound, and in that moment, I realized something profound. The pain, the constant, throbbing ache that had been my companion for so long, it had finally gone silent. It wasn't gone, not completely, but it no longer had a voice. This table, this family, wasn't what it once was. It was smaller, quieter, and bore the scars of its history. But it was enough. It was steady, was honest. It was whole in a way that luxury and appearances could never be. And for the very first time in my life, peace didn't feel like surrender. It felt like coming home. Thank you so much for sharing this moment with me. Stories like these remind us that healing is a journey, and home isn't a place, but a feeling of peace. If this resonated with you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more stories about the quiet, powerful moments that shape our lives. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you next time.